So, Jamie, you've written some of my favorite quotes, and so I'll probably end up starting and ending the interview with one of those. But what's crazy is that one of my favorite quotes I turned into a magnet maybe, gosh, like 7 or 8 years ago, and I didn't know it said unknown on the Tumblr or whatever it is that I found it. So I turned it into a magnet, have it on my fridge, and had no idea it was you until I was actually researching you for this podcast interview. So, but it's the quote, "You'll need coffee shops and sunsets and road trips, airplanes and passports and new songs and old songs, but people more than anything else. You will need other people, and you will need to be that other person to someone else. A living, breathing, screaming invitation to believe better things." And this was just so romantic to me. So thank you for giving me that and for putting that out into the world. It really is one of my favorite quotes still to this day. So
that's really cool. I love that story. And
so, Jamie, maybe we'll kick it off by you can explain to us what the goals of To Write Love on Her Arms is.
Yeah. So, the best thing I ever get to hear is I get to meet people who tell me they're still alive because of the work that we do as an organization. So really the goal is for people who are struggling specifically with depression, addiction, self-injury, thoughts of suicide, that anyone dealing with those things would know that it's okay to talk about them, that it's okay to be honest and open, and more than anything, that it's okay to ask for help. So we work not only to encourage people, but also to connect people to resources and also to give financially so that people who need help but can't afford it are able to get the help that they need and deserve.
Amazing.
Very needed. So, Jamie, you said another quote I'll read. "We have a lot of control over how we talk to each other, how we treat each other, how we make time for each other. Love is a lot of things, but at the center, it is a choice to love people, a choice to be kind and to live with grace." Why do you think we've gotten so far away from this as a country and really as the world right now?
Oh, it's such a hard one. I mean, especially, in 2018, a few days after an election, it's such a challenging one in terms of what does it mean to love people. And if I do my best to love this group of people, will it offend this other group of people? So I think we all get to try to wrestle through what does this mean? And I guess in light of the work that we do as an organization and the work that I get to be a part of, it's kind of like, what does it mean to love someone who is struggling with something I've never experienced? What does it mean to love someone when I don't understand it and I'm not sure how to help, but I want to be there? So it's a fascinating one. We all love that word, love, and we love it especially when it's easy or when it's certain. And I think when it comes to what you talked about, which is kind of this moment in America, or even specifically, mental health, it's I think can be a lot more challenging. But we want to invite people to keep showing up and to keep doing our best to care for the folks around us, especially those who are struggling.
Yeah, I know we both love Bob Goff, and he says love is it's a sign language, like, because, there's the 5 love languages, and he always says it's a sign language, it's a do thing, and I love that. A lot of your quotes are about needing people, and a lot of your book is about needing people, and you say that you get quiet and angry and bitter when you're left to yourself. I know that there's been times for me when I felt alone in my darkness, and I'll scroll through my contacts for someone to reach out to, and I have over 1,000 contacts in my phone, and I just can't pull myself to contact a single one. And these are people that I know love me, people that I know would be there for me, people that would hate to see me go, but there's something about that dark place that keeps you from reaching out. And it may be that you don't want to be that draining friend, or that you may think that they're not going to understand. I'm not sure, but if any of my friends told me that they were feeling how I was feeling in those moments, all I would want to do is be there for them. And I know we're not meant to be an island. So how do you break out of this in the midst of any pain or darkness that comes up?
I think it's really hard. I think I relate to everything you just said. I'm someone who struggles with depression and part of that, and I know it's not unique to only you or me, but part of, I think, depression, anxiety, so many of these issues is that it does cause us to isolate. It causes us to withdraw and to want to be alone. And, I think we have to remember that we do need people. That was kind of how you introduced the question, but to remember that we are designed for connection and that we're made to be known and to be loved. And so I think to reach out to people who care about us, and also to know there's a time when, say for me, I need more help than my friends can provide. And so I'm thankful to have a relationship with a licensed mental health counselor, so I can have conversations with this woman for an hour every single week. And that, I know I put that at the top of the list in terms of the connection that I need when I'm in that dark place.
So would you say that's what you do that makes you feel less alone, or what are your tools for feeling less alone?
Yeah, I like that you said tools, because I think it is a number of things. I would put counseling at the top of the list in terms of priority, but I need friends and I need family and I need to get enough sleep and to exercise. And, I think self-care is sort of like this buffet where we all get to pick out different things that we like. And I think the important thing is just that we figure out what are those things that make us feel alive, that make us feel recharged, that make us remind us who we are and help us feel healthy. So yeah, for me, I think it's throwing every good thing, counseling. For me, it's medication, relationships. And then I think only in the last few years did I realize that self-care piece was vital as well. That as an adult, you don't have to outgrow your hobbies and your quirks and the things that make you smile, like that can actually be part of how you deal with the hard things in your life.
Yeah, part of adulting is playtime. I think we forget that as adults so often. And that's what I know for me, it's like what keeps my brain chemicals most balanced is finding ways to make time for playtime and then going out and doing it, and sometimes, especially when you're in bad mood or you're just feeling eggy that day or whatever it is, you end up not being motivated to get out and do the thing that makes you feel the most alive. So I guess that would be the same thing you would say to those that feel alone, to find ways, find whatever your own tools are, whoever you are.
Yeah, I think honestly, and I know I touched on it out of my own experience, but I would put that professional help piece at the top of the list. And I think a couple simple examples, it's like when, if you break a bone, you go to the hospital, and none of us think twice about that. You go to a place where they know how to fix broken bones. When your car is giving you trouble, you want to get it to a mechanic because they know how to fix car trouble. And so I think the work that I get to be a part of, we're kind of dreaming about this world where people would approach mental health and addiction the same way, where we would say, hey, there are people and places that exist to meet these needs and to have these unique, challenging conversations. And how do we get you the best possible help? And then after that you add in relationships and playtime and all the other good things. But I think I've become so thankful for professional help specifically.
I agree. I think of course there's a taboo around this subject, but we also just don't look at mental health professionals as the professionals that they are. We don't consider a psychologist or a psychiatrist, you couldn't become a real doctor. It's like, I can't imagine anything being more real, that's, but your brain almost has to come before your body in a lot of senses. So it's always unfortunate to me when people are so worried about having some label or going to therapy. They're afraid of the word therapy because of whatever context it's coming from in their past life. So I think that's really important to just bring up. It's okay. Like we all need that help. None of us are born professionals at this.
And I think too that stigma that you mentioned is real and it's present, but it really can begin to go away when we talk openly and honestly. Kind of the stuff that the three of us are talking about right now. The hope is that it makes it easier and it's almost contagious, or we give people permission to realize, wow, they're talking about this, maybe I can talk about it as well. Because that stigma can be such a barrier for so many people. But I think when you do decide to be vulnerable and you're met with a response that actually feels good, then it reminds you, wow, I can talk about this. And maybe you're met with a response where someone else feels the same way, where someone else can relate.
When you talk about anything that you have shame around, you take the power away from it.
Yeah, because the shame says we have to keep it a secret.
Yeah.
So I agree.
So in your book, you write about the idea that fathers, have a lot to do with many of the things that we've already mentioned thus far. And I know that's something that Jade and I have really had to work through, in our own lives. So maybe you can go into how dads play a role in all of this.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say it's an expert opinion. I think I think just the little bit I know and the little bit that I've experienced just as a human being and a son is that we are so affected by our relationship or our relationships with our parents. And maybe, as you said, for guys, for men, that father relationship is really key. And certainly, I imagine it's also true that our parents are still recovering and trying to make sense of their relationship
for sure
with their parents. And so many of these things just not get passed down, but I think so many people at any age are still navigating the pain, the baggage, the good and bad of that relationship with their parent.
Yeah. We have to see our parents as hurt children also.
Yeah, definitely.
What's something that you needed to hear as a child?
I grew up really loved. Like I had a really good relationship with my parents, with my sisters. It's funny, I feel like a lot of the darkness kind of found me more in the last decade. But I think I was always sensitive and I was prone to worry. And so I think just needing to hear that I was safe, that I was special, that I was seen, that I was good enough. And I think I really did get to hear and experience a lot of that, thankfully. And I know not everyone does, but yeah, I think looking back, I feel like I had my parents' attention in a healthy way and I felt cared for. I don't know. I'm thankful for what I got to experience as a kid.
Yeah. That's going back to the father thing. I know you say in your book that Father's Day means something different to everyone. And, same for Valentine's Day, like holidays have so many, I think a couple of different things that I read about, like holidays are the days that people drink. There's the most drinking and driving accidents. And then I also read, this is kind of interesting, that boys specifically who wet the bed until their teen years, it was like over 90% of them have either no father present or like some sort of traumatic experience with their father. And I thought that was really interesting. And I know for me, a lot of my depression as a kid, it definitely stemmed from my parents, but there were times when I would hit that darkness, I would be like, well, if he had been around, he could have fixed this, or I would have just had someone here to rescue me from this abuse, or so I definitely see how parents play a role there. And it's interesting how, because we do have holidays that center around family so much throughout the year, it's almost like it's hard for people to forget that.
Yeah, to get reminded over and over again.
Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned it, but those holidays are fascinating because they're days that so many people get together and celebrate, but it has a way of exposing or pointing out when that thing is missing. Like, and you brought up a couple examples, but Mother's Day is a day where so many people, maybe most people, kind of go through the motions of celebrating their mom and posting a photo. And yet for someone who lost their mom, never knew their mom, had a broken relationship, it's obviously a different kind of day.
Or can't become a mom.
Yeah. So I think one thing that I think has felt important to us as an organization is just trying to remember those people who feel left out, and knowing that something as beautiful as a mother, being a mother, having a mother, can also be really difficult, or can be really broken, or just simply not an easy day for a lot of people. And just trying to be honest about that and trying to care for folks in a lot of different situations or with a lot of different experiences.
Yeah. I know too, like, light comes from all of this still. And, some of my most important relationships have come because of us needing each other because of the darkness that we were in. This podcast and my desire that I've always had to be a light comes from me growing up in darkness. My passion for invisible children, which is how I met Tom and how I know who you are, because I saw you speak at, I think it was UCLA.
Fourth Estate, yeah.
Yeah, Fourth Estate. My passion there that took me to Uganda and took me to Fourth Estate where I saw you, and to the summit where I met Tom, comes from being a hurt child myself and being an invisible child myself. So that made me have a passion for them. And I know one of my favorite stories and examples is Maya Angelou. She was sexually abused by a man really horribly. And when she finally told her mom, and the next day that man was killed. He was beaten, kicked over and over, and he was killed. And she, as a child, thought that she brought that on, that she caused that it was her voice, her speaking out. So she didn't speak for 6 years, not a word. She didn't speak. Wow. She went mute. And to think that her words are so powerful and her poetry, like her poetry was birthed from that darkness, and she's changed so many hearts, you know. And that's my favorite story about light coming from the darkness. And you know, I'm sure you all know Oprah's story, you know, like so many powerful stories similar. Can you tell us a story, one of your favorite stories from your organization's experiences? I know you made a documentary about one of Tom's students. Her father had PTSD. So I know you've got a ton of stories. You probably experience a lot with your organization, seeing a lot of pain, but can you tell us one of your favorite stories where light was born from it?
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, I have a new friend, a recent friend from the last year, and he is an undocumented immigrant who swam across the Rio Grande as a 12-year-old, was caught, ended up in a detention center. His parents were planning his funeral when they got a call that their son was alive.
Wow.
Just this radical story straight out of a movie. You know, he ends up in America as a 12-year-old and doesn't speak English and has to learn the language and has to find his way in this new country, and has become one of my favorite people and a new friend, and is just such a source of joy, and is telling his story, and obviously has a heart for other people with similar stories, whether it's dreamers, whether it's immigrants, refugees. And for me, he has had to survive so much, and still does, still has to navigate a lot of ugliness and ignorance, and in the midst of that has struggled with depression, and has had to navigate his own mental health. And he has, to me, just become this incredible person who is still at risk of being deported, but is fighting for not only his family, not only his friends, but just is fighting for so many, thousands of people who are walking similar roads, at times literally, like people making their way to this country, and people who are fleeing poverty and violence. And so that's one that's, I hear so many stories that are, I was close to suicide and I encountered your organization, whether it was through the website or social media, and I ended up getting help and I ended up staying alive. So I get to hear those stories consistently, and that, I think that's the best thing I get to hear. But my friend Gustavo, he has every reason to be cynical, to be bitter, to be jaded, to feel like life has let him down, like this country has let him down, and yet he still wakes up and has a smile on his face and wants to be alive, and I think is really an inspiration to me. So hopefully that's an example.
Yeah, I do love that.
Do you have any daily habits or go-to almost tricks, I guess, that you use to help?
Magic trick.
Yeah, to make people feel seen when you have interactions with them just on a daily basis?
Oh, I don't know about tricks, but do you mean like friends or people that I meet?
I guess it could be anything. Like I just was thinking while we've been discussing this that
anyone could be going through this darkness
at any moment, right?
Yeah.
So there's something we've talked about in the past where even just the littlest thing, like opening the door for somebody or saying hi to a passerby, or someone in the elevator with you. It can be as simple as that.
And you never know what the last straw is for someone either.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think all of those things matter. I think a lot of times we forget the value, especially with friends or people that we're close to, of really asking that question of how someone is doing.
Yeah.
Especially when we have a hunch that they're not doing great. And so what does it look like to really give that question the time and space that it deserves, and
not be afraid of the answer?
Yeah. And to keep showing up and to keep expressing that concern. And then, as you guys pointed out, you never know, even if it's with a stranger, what could change someone's day. I met a young lady years ago who lost her brother to suicide, and he jumped off one of the bridges in New York City. And I remember she said to me that she wondered if anyone smiled at him as he walked his final steps to this bridge, and basically asking the question, I wonder if someone had smiled at him,
right,
if it could have changed his day and he might still be here.
Yeah.
And so she was basically presenting the possibility that something as small as a smile could have saved her brother, and that has always stayed with me.
Yeah. It reminds me of how, Jade, you've talked about how Tom asks you often, how's your heart? And
he never says, hey Jade, what's up?
Yeah.
Or like, how are you? He always, or a lot of people want to know what's going on, like what you're actually doing. His answer is always, how is your heart?
His question. Yeah.
I think
it's a beautiful way cut straight to the core.
Sure.
You know. And I think that's an important point too, is just to, when we are being inquisitive with our friends or even with strangers, ask something a little bit deeper than what's the usual, you know, how are you doing? What's up?
Yeah.
Because if you want something more than I'm fine, I'm okay, I'm doing good, then you're going to have to ask something a little different.
Yeah. Jade brought up Bob Goff, and Bob loves to ask people what they want, even if he's meeting them for the first time. And to me, it's so much cooler than what do you do, you know? Because I think also part of what he's maybe implying is could I help you get there?
Yeah.
Like, where are you trying to get? Where are you trying to go? What do you want out of this life? Or even what do you want out of this month or this year? And I think it's easy to assume that he's asking, because then it gives him the opportunity to care and to participate.
I like the question too. What are you grateful for? Or what are you grateful for today? You know, and it is also a conversation starter, because whatever they're going to say are the perfect things for you to talk about, because they're what they love talking about the most, I'm sure.
Yeah.
What are
Dating
your
tips?
answers to those questions, Jamie? Is it like, how is your heart right now, and what are you aching for?
Oh, okay. It's been a hard stretch, honestly. It's been a hard few weeks. Yeah, just I'm really aware of my own depression, my own questions, just kind of navigating. I just moved to Los Angeles a few months ago and trying to figure out if that's the right decision, and kind of just what
it usually is.
Yeah, what can be summed up as where do I belong? You know, I'm also single and 38, and growing up, I wouldn't have imagined that I'd be single at 38, and just kind of the longing and the struggle of trying to be okay in the midst of being super aware that I wish that was different. So, and that relates to what I want and, you know, what I hope can happen in the future. But at the same time, there's a lot to be thankful for. I'm grateful for my parents. I'm grateful for my sisters, my nephews, my best friends. I'm healthy. I'm alive. So I feel the hard stuff, but I think it's important to remember the good stuff as well.
I like that.
Well, since you brought up the fact that you're single, I guess the question is, are you wanting to be in a relationship? Or I guess
yes,
you want to be in a relationship, but is it the issue there that
like,
you have so many? Yeah, you have this like deepness about you. You have this, you know, this company that keeps you in maybe some dark natured thoughts, and your life is lending itself to these people that need your help, but there's a lot of darkness around that. There's a lot of like heaviness around that. So is that any kind of effect on your dating life?
No, I don't think so. I think the short version is, well, I've been in some relationships that didn't work out, and I think a lot of people at any age can relate to that. So I've participated in things that didn't last. And part of even wanting to be in California was just to leave the sleepy beach town in Florida that I grew up in, because I wanted to be in a place where I felt like I had a better chance to meet someone. And then people make the obvious joke like, yeah, you want stability and commitment, so you went to Los Angeles.
Well, there's 11 million people. If you can't find someone in that city, then you might be doing something wrong.
No, I mean, both are true, I think. But and then I think a mix of being picky and I've also, you know, there's times where I've spent a lot of time in things that weren't reciprocated, you know, so just I notice someone or pursue someone and it's not mutual. And so I think kind of a mix of those things. And then I guess ultimately we're all trying to find that one person and that one relationship. And so I still have hope